intruder.
An aspect of the indie gaming scene that I've enjoyed is how it's led to a number of people bringing back retro-style games and properties, which in turn has led to a positive impact on the wider industry, but this hasn't always led to the most ideal of outcomes. For every Doom 2016 or Wasteland 2, we've gotten something like Alien Rage or Strafe, one that can't decide if it's old school or new school and comes away as the worst of both, or something that is old school but tries to throw in something different with not the best results, at least at first. Thankfully, this is a game that knows what it is and doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. It rides it and revels in it. DUSK from New Blood Interactive and the one-man team of David Szymanski, which I can say with confidence is one of the best, if not the best, games to fully release in 2018. DUSK is about a nameless man who is about to be sacrificed by cultists only to escape, and as he finds his way to safety, finds himself pulled into something much bigger than a barnyard coven. Believe it or not, DUSK conveys this narrative with the same style of storytelling as the original Doom. There's a great deal of environmental storytelling that goes back and forth between being subtle and on the nose like Half-Life and overt and in your face. There's even text boxes at the end of the episodes to segue into the next, and it all comes together into a very subtle yet compelling narrative, even though the most story-heavy segments don't come into play till the last episode. And even then, there's a lot that isn't said and left open to the player to interpret, like who the DUSK dude is. Unlike the Doom guy or the Doom Slayer, the DUSK dude is just a faceless vessel for the player with absolutely no backstory, but considering how the game plays and handles the story, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But even Doom managed to give an idea of who the Doom guy was, even for those who didn't read the instruction booklet. For all we know, the DUSK dude could actually be a raging pedophile and the cult was doing their good deed for the year. Now, DUSK is an old school shooter through and through. It doesn't try to add anything new to the mix. Everything moves at a fast pace with the DUSK dude running like a Kenyan athlete. And of course, there's a diverse roster of enemies to go up against, like chainsaw wielding hillbillies, KKK wizards, shotgun toting scarecrows, and pants crappingly scary wendigos. All the enemies are not only visually distinct, but have their own unique attack patterns, encouraging strategic thinking on the fly as you also have to weigh the pros and cons of your weapons. The weapon inventory does feel limited, I won't lie there, compared to other games, but it's still a wide enough arsenal for tackling different situations. The only real issue the gameplay has is that some of the levels just feel very small in scope and scale, and lack an exploration element that other levels have, which will leave you begging for more because the game is just so much fun, and there's just so many moments where you're just getting into the heat of things and then suddenly the level's over. But a more annoying issue is the HUD. With how it's set up, it's actually easy to mistake your ammo counter for your health, what with the ammo count being in the middle, whereas in other old school shooters, the health count is in that spot. So you're going to end up in situations you honestly should not have ended up in. Visually, DUSK is stylized to resemble the early years of 3D modeling and pulls it off perfectly. If it came out at the same time as the original Quake, it would be accused of being a rip-off of that classic, especially since it has a similar color palette inspired by the Dirt Spectrum, but with one caveat. Szymanski added a color filter option that can radically alter the look and feel of the game. One setting makes the visuals more vivid and comparable to Doom, while a black and white one turns even the most action-heavy segments into something right out of a horror game. There's even some outright trippy ones, like the setting that makes the game resemble Szymanski's earlier game, Fingerbones. However, I don't recommend using these settings in particular. The reason is because these trippier filters make certain environmental clues or color-coded items harder to see, let alone tell apart, or make some enemies flat out invisible from a distance, giving way to cheap deaths. Thankfully, nothing like that can be said about the game's sound design, which is of an impeccable standard. The soundtrack composed by Andrew Hulshult is just amazing and sounds like it came right out of Doom, and is one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard. The quieter moments are permeated by some immersive atmospheric sounds, and the enemies have audio cues to help you realize what to expect before you've even seen hide nor hair of one, which plays into the more horror-fueled moments like when you go up against the Wendigos. I swear, the sound they made when you reveal them had me jumping in my seat more than once. There's a reason why every time you start the game it recommends you play with headphones, and I suggest you do. Even if you don't plan on buying DUSK after this review, then at least do yourself a favor and check out the soundtrack. I've caught myself headbanging enough times while playing that now I've got it on my phone and even played the songs on my own radio show. In fact, I think I'll let the soundtrack speak for itself and play for you guys some of my personal favorite songs from it. Dusk may sound like a love letter to retro shooters, but that is a lie. It is an old school shooter that if made back in the late 90s or early 2000s, we'd all be praising it as a classic of the genre and demanding a remaster. Sure, it has some issues here and there, but they ended up being forgivable nitpicks that I was able to get over as fast as I was annoyed. More than anything, I'm kicking myself for not picking it up earlier in 2018 than I could have rightfully made it my game of the year. Now I can only do that in hindsight, but at least topically I can say this. Go buy Dusk, you won't regret it, and if you're a parent, considering a current affairs standards for what is inappropriate for children, it's safe to say it also carries Tracy Grimshaw's own personal seal of approval. Alright, thanks for checking out this video, I really do appreciate it, and if you really enjoyed it then by all means, feel free to also subscribe to the channel. Now for movie reviews, I've got 2 in the pipeline, one for Incredibles 2 and the other for the new Stormboy movie, and for game reviews, I haven't actually decided yet, but I might be taking a look at the Resident Evil 2 remake, and I think I might also be getting back into doing 2 game reviews per month, but for now we'll just have to wait and see. I've got all that and more coming up, so like usual, stick around.